Hey there, sports history fan. This is Arnie Chapman, founder of the Sports History Network and also known around these parts as the Football History Dude. Now, before we get into this episode, I just want to give you a huge thank you for all of the support that you've given the Sports History Network over the years. And as we close out this year, I just want to wish you happy holidays. And you're going to hear from other members of the network here at the end of this episode, so stay tuned. And speaking of these other members, well, let's jump right into another episode presented by the Sports History Network.
Welcome, everybody, to the final episode of 2023 on One Guy with a Mic. Presents Dingers and Dunks. A lot less dingers and a lot less dunks lately because we've been talking about the gridiron. So, I appreciate everybody coming in, hanging out, chilling, relaxing, listening to a little podcast of mine here. It's been a real fun year so far. It was a fun year. I shouldn't say so far because, well, you can say so far. Year's almost over. This will be the last podcast of the year 2023. Then we'll be busting out podcasts for 2024 already. Wow. All right. What a year it has been. We didn't really do a whole lot at the first part of this year. Right? Didn't put a lot of podcasts out at that time. Just because we were saving up money for our trip, working hard, putting in those 16-hour days, so we could take a 10-day adventure in the middle of July. So, this is not only just a review of the year that the podcast has accomplished, but it's also a review in sports, baby. Because that's what we're here for, right? All about the sports. I really hope everybody had a great holiday. Everybody got what they wanted for Christmas. Santa didn't put any lumps of coals in their stocking or anything like that. That everybody was just like, you know, it was a blessed year. Because, you know, for me, it was. Very much so. Right? And just really happy to have along. We did, like I said, at the back half of the year, we concentrated more on football. It was Football Fridays. It was great. It was a fun time. We're probably going to do some more football podcasts next year as well. So, doing a little revamp. We did some historical topics, but we also basically did current historical topics as well. I think that's going to be a continuation of what's going to take place next year as well. We're going to try to put some more YouTube out. We're going to try to put some more do some TikTok stuff, maybe do a little more content creation rather than just podcast creation. Kind of doing that in the old streaming video game situation right now on Twitch as well. So I think 2024 we're just going to take it off. What would 2023 bring us? Well, it brought us more listeners to where we are now over 650. We have 676 unique listeners of this podcast. We reached the download. We crossed the 1,000 downloads this year as well. We had a fantastic November with 277 downloads for the month. We reached a lot of people. Brought a lot of people in to our little unique area of sports. And we're going to continue with that going into 2024. I also had an 8-week stretch of podcasts being released every single week as well. I'm sure you guys got tired of listening to that, but I appreciate every single one of you for listening to me. It's a lot of fun. Also, the goal of 2024 is to actually have guests on the podcast, whether that's friends of mine, whether that's coworkers that want to get on the podcast, or whether that's just former players that we can get here to do some interviews. That's going to be the goal for 2024, is to actually expand on the podcast to being just more than just my voice every single week. So, those are the goals of what happened. So let's talk about the trip that we took in July, where we started the day off leaving out on July 18th, heading to Field of Dreams in Dyersville, Iowa. Now, I've lived in Iowa pretty much my entire life. Never been to Dyersville, Iowa to the Field of Dreams movie set. Couldn't really see the MLB park because it was under construction, which is fine. That's fine. But I'll tell you what, if you go, make sure to bring a ball and a glove because you can play catch in the field. I didn't do that. So lost a little bit of that experience of that. Checked out the gift shop, got some stuff out of the gift shop. You can take a tour of the house. We did not have the time to take a tour of the house, but you could do that as well. You can walk outside of you can walk out of the corn, which I did do. There is photos on the Facebook page of that as well. And they say we spent about an hour there just walking around, checking things out. I would say you could probably go there and spend more time there, obviously. So we started off there. Then we continued our trip on day one to Chicago, where I saw my first ever Chicago Cubs game. And it was against the Washington Nationals, all right? And obviously we started our day early that morning. We started our day at 5 a.m. So by the time the baseball game rolled around, it was already 7 o'clock, right? So it was a long day. We drove a lot of miles. Put in 9 hours on the trip, right? So, what happened on that fateful July 18th game? Well, the Cubs go on to win 17-3. That's right. The Chicago Cubs beat the Washington Nationals 17-3. Seiya Suzuki had 4 hits. Drove in 3 runs that night. Patrick Wisdom hit a home run that night as well. And Miguel Amaya and Michael Tauchman drove in 3 runs for the Cubs. And they had 20 hits that night. It was a very magical evening. Very fun night. Definitely need to go back to Wrigley next year. So then we stay in Chicago. Then we wake up and make our trip we stopped at South Bend to check out Notre Dame. Drove around the campus of Notre Dame for a bit. All right. Then, after that, we continued on to Canton, Ohio, where we'd stay for the night. Then we'd wake up, go to the National Football Hall of Fame, which, by the way, was very, very amazing. Not only just the bust room, but they got a guy from England that is a volunteer, and if y'all ever seen Big Bang Theory, it's definitely the Sherman moment where he is working remotely and has a robot working around the office. That's what this guy does. And it was by far the best 15 minutes of talking to that guy I've had. The bust room is amazing. A lot of the busts are worn from people touching them, obviously. But it's a circular situation. Like, you start at the bottom and work your way to the top. It's a very unique experience. You could probably definitely we spent about a day there. Not a day. We spent a good half a day there before we had to leave, because then we drove to Cooperstown that night. Oh, well, we stayed in Sydney, New York, by the way. But then we left Canton, go to Sydney, New York, spend the night, spend 3 days in Cooperstown. Well, actually, it was like 2, because we were up there on Friday, which was the first official day of the weekend. Not a whole lot going on, some camps and stuff. Then the second day was they had the parade at night, which was pretty awesome. So walked through the Hall of Fame twice, which I would recommend if you're going to walk through the Hall of Fame twice, and you're going to make a trip to the Canton Hall of Fame, you might as well get a membership, because if you're a member of the NFL Hall of Fame, you get into the the Baseball Hall of Fame for free. Just saying. So, took complete advantage of that, by the way. Met some cool guys sitting on a park bench. Talked to them for about an hour and a half about baseball in the Hall of Fame, so that was great. It was one of the smaller crowds for the Hall of Fame induction ceremony, with Fred McGriff and Scott Rowland going in. Was able to meet one of the guys that we follow each other on Twitter. So that was pretty cool. So we got a picture together and got and talked and everything. And that would be the McGriff collector, where he's got all sorts of different Fred McGriff stuff. So that was fun meeting him. And I was actually happy to see Fred McGriff make the Hall of Fame, which was even funnier. My phone died. My phone died just as the parade was ending and got to Fred McGriff. And so I didn't get any pictures of Scott Rowland. But that's okay with me because I'm not a Scott Rowland fan. So we spent 2 days up in Cooperstown. Then we left that Sunday morning, missed induction ceremony, whatever. And that's neither here nor there at this point. But I would go back to Cooperstown on induction ceremony for fun. I would also go back to Cooperstown and spend a weekend up there because that area of upstate New York is beautiful. The most beautiful scenery I've ever seen in my life. And I've seen the Colorado, which is amazing, by the way. So then we left there and we went down to Gettysburg, walked the Gettysburg battlefield. That was pretty memorable. You can take tours. You can pay for the car tour or whatever, but you can just park and walk too if you want to, and not pay for anything. So that was fun. Then we went down to DC, and we saw all the monuments pretty much on the National Mall that we didn't get to see. We didn't do any of the museums. Did take a tour of the Capitol. That was pretty sweet. Saw the Rotunda and the statue room and all this. And then the next day, we walked the mall again, the National Mall again, and we got to take a tour of the White House, which taking the tour of the White House is a lot of fun. Granted, it's only the East Wing. Granted, you only get to see the entryway of the White House. You don't really get to see the West Wing or anything like that. But you do get to see the East Wing, the press room, the state room, all that. And if you can get in to it, I would recommend taking a tour of the White House at some point. Because that, to me, was my favorite part. My uncle's favorite part was the Capitol. So then from D.C., we went to Charleston, West Virginia. Then stayed the night in West Virginia. And then we drove all the way back from West Virginia all the way to Sioux City, Iowa in one shot. So that was a fun trip. And then, obviously, we started golfing more this year after that trip, which is great. Then we started doing the podcast a lot more. So I think that was a nice little breather that trip was to really recharge my batteries and get me to do more things that I like to do. And the podcast doing this is obviously one of them. So on that note, what did 2023 bring us in sports, right? Well, on January 22nd, January 2nd of this year, you had Damar Hamlin, who suffered a cardiac arrest on the field while the Bills and Bengals were playing each other. And then 90 days later, he was finally released from the hospital. So that was amazing of what they did on the field, right? They were able to revive him, bring him back, and now he's actually playing again, right? Then you got February 1st, Tom Brady announced his retirement for the second time from football, and then takes a minor stake in ownership of the Las Vegas Raiders. Let's see. You had LeBron on February 7th. He passed Kareem Abdul-Jabbar with 38,387 points to become the NBA's all-time leading scorer. On the 12th of February, you had the Chiefs beat the Eagles 38-35 in the Super Bowl. All right. You had in March Madness, you had number 16 Fairleigh Dickinson beat Purdue, only becoming the second team to ever be a number 16 team to be a 1 seed, which I think that's the more the college atmosphere is changing, I think the more that's going to happen. We're going to have a 16 beating a 1 seed. Let's see. You had the Packers traded Aaron Rodgers in March, right? In April. And then he had only played 4 snaps for the Jets and tears Achilles. Correct. So that was bad news for Aaron Rodgers. In June, you had May wasn't really a whole lot of things going on that were really anything. So then in June, what happens? Well, the Denver Nuggets won their first NBA championship in franchise history, as well. Being the Vegas Golden Knights winning their first Stanley Cup as well, and then Victor Wembanyama was drafted number one over by the Spurs in the NBA draft that year. Then you roll on to nothing really in August because it's dog days of summer, football just starting, baseball happening, everything like that. So nothing that we really discuss on this podcast was taking place during that time. You had the Aces winning another WNBA championship in October. On October 18th, they won back-to-back titles. November 1st, you had the Texas Rangers winning their first World Series in franchise history over the Arizona Diamondbacks, with Corey Seager being your MVP. In November, you had the Australia winning the 2023 Cricket World Cup, beating India in the final. Of golf news, you had Tiger Woods made his return to competitive golf on November 30th. And then you come into December, and you had Florida State get snubbed for the college football playoff, or as CNN calls it, controversially left out. I don't think there was any controversy about it. Alabama deserved to be in. Maybe not so much Texas, right? Then you had Shohei Ohtani announcing that he's going to sign a 10-year, $700 million deal with the Los Angeles Dodgers and only make $2 million a year because he's deferring the rest of it. That made huge news as well. And now we're at the end of the year where we got playoffs coming up. You got playoff championships, so that's going to be fun. One of the things that I thought was crazy, I mean, I guess not really crazy because there's not really anything that, to me, there's like stuff that happened in sports this year, but nothing like crazy. You know what I mean? You didn't really have like, you had Otani's like contract, right? That's crazy, right? But there wasn't like really, and then you had a lot of first time winners. But there's not like anything that was overwhelming to me in sports this year, which I think that's probably a good thing, that sports is probably coming back to like not having all those like wow moments, right? I think that's probably a good thing. I think, but if we look forward to 2024, and potential champions, I really think the Ravens look good to be the winner of the Super Bowl this year, as well as they're playing. There's not really a team in the NFC that's really put together as well yet. For baseball wise, everybody's going Dodgers, and I understand like they're getting a stacked team. I understand they got Ohtani and they got Yamamura and they got, Tyler Glass now, and they got all these big names, right? But just because you have big names doesn't mean like that means you're going to come out here and win a title. I mean, ask the Yankees about that. They had big names for a lot of times in the years from the last time they won a title in 2000 to 2009, and they still didn't win one until 2009. So, so I really, it's Yamamoto, sorry. So I really just think that until they start playing games, you're not going to know who's going to win. And we all can sit here and say, oh yeah, the Dodgers are going to win it all for the next 10 years, which I don't think that's the case. I think they could win like 3 championships in the next 10 years, but I don't think they're going to win it all next year. You also got to remember the Dodgers have the, two of the Dodger championships have came off on shortened seasons. So, I mean, to me, if it's not a short season, I don't see the Dodgers winning the World Series. That's just me, though. We also, for basketball-wise, the Clippers were unstoppable for 9 straight games, and it looks like with Harden and George and Kawhi in the lineup together, they're no one's going to beat them. Boston's the best team in the NBA right now, which is fine, but they'll fold come playoff time, like like lately that they usually do. And college football wise, we got the 4 in the playoffs. You got Washington, Texas, Alabama, Michigan. I think Washington and Alabama is going to be in the college football playoffs next year, and I think it's going to be Alabama's to win. So that's where I'm at. I just wanted to do a quick. So on that note, I just wanted to do a quick little review of the year podcast of sports. Just throw some stuff out there, get a little game plan going for you guys on what we're going to do in 2024. I feel like it's not more of an end of the year, but more of the beginning of next year is what we're going to be looking forward to. So I always appreciate everybody listening and talking, or listening to me talk. As I said, you're going to hear some other voices on here because we're going to start amping this thing up. We're going to be starting year 3 of this podcast next year. All right, it's going to be starting year 3. Come February 4th, it'll be 2 years since we've started this podcast in the beginning of year 3. So it's time to get some more voices on here. Get some hosts, not really hosts, but, get some more opinions on here. So if you want to be on the podcast, I am taking any and all comers. Just go ahead and reach out to me on Twitter, one guy with a mic. All right. And tweet at me saying you want to be on the podcast. Present me with a topic, and we'll bring it up. Okay? All right. You guys have a Merry Christmas, a Happy New Year, Kwanzaa, whatever you celebrate this year, don't celebrate. But I look forward to talking to you all guys in the year 2024. Make sure that if you're not following yet, go ahead and follow, please. Make sure you download the episodes as well. Make sure you go check out my YouTube page in case you ever want to listen to hear the podcast on YouTube. In case you don't have time to listen on your phone or whatever, and you're doing something in the house, always listen on YouTube. It's One Guy with a Mic is the YouTube channel as well. If you Google One Guy with a Mic all together, it'll bring you right to the Google page, by the way, or the YouTube page. Okay, so if you just Google One Guy with a Mic all together, it'll be okay. So, all right, with that, appreciate y'all, and I will be talking to you guys next week. All right.
Hello, sports fans. This is Mark Mortier from Yesterday's Sports on the Sports History Network. I just wanted to thank everyone who has listened to my podcasts and read my articles during the year of 2023. I wish you all a Merry Christmas, a Happy Hanukkah, or whatever holiday you may be celebrating, and for a joyful New Year. Thank you once again.
This is Harv Aronson of the Total Sports Recall Podcast, a part of the Sports History Network. We here at Sports History Network want to wish everyone a wonderful holiday season and extend our gratitude for your support of the Sports History Network. Happy holidays to all.
Hi, my friends of sports history. This is Darren Hayes of the Pigskin Dispatch and Jersey Dispatch podcast. I want to thank you for supporting the Sports History Network and all of us podcasters here, along with our podcasts and our other works, such as our websites and books, especially my podcast, the Pigskin Dispatch podcast, Jersey Dispatch podcast, and the Orville Mulligan Sports Writer podcast that I helped co-create and produce with Oz Davis. Also, thanks a lot for supporting my book, The World's Greatest Pro Gridiron Team, the 1903 Franklin All-Stars. And remember the reason for the season coming up here at the holidays, and spend time with your family and friends and enjoy each other. Have a Merry Christmas and a blessed New Year.